What's up, Professor Orglees here. We're taking a look at the object serialization lecture. I have two zip files here. You'll see the serialization example as well as the JSON example. I have two different examples. We're going to take a look at two different approaches. Serialization can be done in many different ways, but JSON is one of the most popular ways, as well as the pre-built Java library that we're going to take a look at with the first example. So download the zips, load them up into NetBeans, and we'll take a look at the first example. Now, in this first example, we can take a look at the main class. Remember, the main class is the same name as the project name. Now, look at here. I have the 3 lines of code just like we did before. So I have the fxml loader, which I store the loader object. Instead of calling the static method, I'll load it independently. That way I get access to the controller. Why do I want access to the controller? Just the same as before, the same with threads, as well as the switching of scenes. And now with serialization, we need the stage in order to know when the user closes the application. So I'm going to pass the stage over to the controller before it's destroyed. This is a parameter. So once the start method is finished executing, the parameter will be destroyed. Before it's destroyed, I'm going to pass it over to the controller. In other examples, that line was up here. In this example, it's down below. It doesn't really matter where it is. All that matters is I get access to the stage before the start method is finished executing. If I go over to the controller and scroll down to the ready method, you'll see I store the stage, and I'll also set up some other information with the stage, like when the user closes the window. But first, let's talk about serialization. What is it? What do I need to know for the exam? What do I need to study? So if you just search object serialization, you'll see Java provides a mechanism called object serialization where an object can be represented as a sequence of bytes. A lot of times in the Oracle docs, they'll call it a stream of bytes that includes the object's data as well as information about the object's type and the types of data stored in the object. You'll see after a serialized object has been written into a file, it can be read from the file and deserialized. That is, the type information and bytes that represent the object and its data can be used to recreate the object in memory. Most impressive is that the entire process is JVM independent, meaning an object can be serialized on one platform and deserialized on an entirely different platform. So if I'm on Mac, I can serialize the object, and if I'm on Windows, I can deserialize the object. It doesn't matter what platform. It can be on Mac, Windows, Linux. I can have a Java server or I can have a Python server. It doesn't really matter. I can pass the object over from server to server or even from local machine to server. It doesn't really matter. It's serialized. You can think of almost like encryption. If you know anything about encryption, it's almost like encrypting the data, sending it over, and then decrypting the data. Except it's not really encryption, it's serialization. So you'll serialize the object, send it over, and then you'll deserialize the object and load it back into memory. You'll see how we're going to use two specific classes, object input stream and object output stream. They're high-level streams that contain the methods for serializing and deserializing an object. So really, all that matters is that you have Java. If you have Java installed on your machine or a Java compiler or the JVM, then you can serialize and deserialize the object. Okay, it's a good way to send data across the web. It's also a good way to load and save data, which is a requirement for your final project. So if I go back to the final project and look at the rubric, okay, you need to load and save data. Now, what is the purpose of this? This is 5% of the overall grade. What that's saying is, let's say I have a game. The user's in the middle of the game. They want to save the game and resume later. So when they close the app, you would save the game. When they open it back up, they can resume where they left off. Or let's say you have you're taking notes. You're creating a note taker for the class. when you close the app, it's going to save all your notes. And then when you open it back up, you don't want to have to type the same notes again. You want to load the data from where you left off and start typing and increasing the number of notes that you have, not decreasing them just because you close the application. Okay, so we want a smart application. It remembers what we were doing when we were last using the app. So when we start the app back up, I can resume where I left off. So that's the whole point of saving and loading data. And that's why we're going over serialization. Now, first things first, let's take a look at the person class. Now you'll see person implements serializable. Okay, this is very important. This is my class. This is my object. This is my class. I'm gonna load it into memory. So I'm gonna create an object, and then I'm gonna serialize the object and store it to a file. I'm gonna close the app. Then when I load the app back up, I'm gonna deserialize the object and put it back into memory. Okay, and in order to do that, the class or the object that you want to serialize needs to implement serializable. Okay, this is very important. You'll see I put the entire package here. I can remove this package, and then I just need to add an import. Okay, so it just depends on how you want to write it. If you put the import up here, then you can just use the interface name. If you don't use the import, you need to specify the package. Now, Java IO is a common package, so that's in the JDK. So if I open up libraries and open up the JDK, okay, we have all these jar files here. So in one of these jar files, it's going to have the Java IO package. And in that package, I have the serializable interface. Okay, I'm going to leave the import so it's a little bit nice and clean. I'll tend to see developers use imports versus writing the entire package in the code. If I don't have this here, I cannot serialize the object. And the whole purpose of this is whenever I call this method, this object input stream, I need to pass in a particular type of object. Okay, I need this object to be serializable. So if I put that as my interface, I can use serializable as the type. So you'll see I have first name, last name, age, and gender. Okay, I have a constructor. I have a few constructors. I have the no-arg constructor, and I have the parameterized constructor. Make sure you go back over your constructors for the final exam. Okay, you want to know your constructors, what's constructor chaining, what's constructor overloading. Go back over all that. And you'll see I have some getters and setters. So I have all my setters, all my getters, they're linked together, and I can get the corresponding information. Okay, now most of the work is going to be done here in the controller. So in the controller, you'll see I have handle open and I have handle save. Let's do the save first. So I'm going to serialize an object. How do I do this? Stick with Professor Wergeles, and we'll see you in the next video.